Welcome to the Fold Mysteries, where we seek to discover everything that lies between the folds of reality. And as everybody can see, we've got awesome Abe back, who has now become a regular on the Fold Mysteries. So Dan, Abe has been awesome. No, everybody knows who the guest is tonight, thankfully. So Abe is now going to be our regular co-host. So I love and appreciate you, Abe, for stepping up to the plate and becoming a member of the Fold Mysteries.
Well, thanks for having me be a part of the Fold family. It's a privilege, to be honest with you, to work with somebody as your caliber. And, just to be a part of the radio scene again. I started MNBRT radio in 2009, and tonight's guest, he did his first podcast on MNBRT radio many years ago. And just to be back on this and kind of recontributing in a different way to the Bigfoot community and the mysteriousness and stuff like that lies within the folds of mysteries is awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. I love the way you put that. That was very nice. I like that. And thank you. So anything new going on with you with MNBRT, and you got anything coming up?
Well, so we have the off season, right? Of research. 3 years of research in the wintertime. Wintertime's usually the slower time of the year for research. And that's where I kind of do things behind the scene and stuff like that, as far as getting things for this year's Minnesota Bigfoot Conference coming up. So yes, we do have 2 confirmed speakers for the MBC this year. It is going to be the first Saturday in October in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, at the Timberlake Lodge and Hotel. People are already inquiring about 3-day VIP ticket packages, and they're already sending in money orders to be put on that list because space is limited. So that's always great. And that's even without announcing the 2 speakers that we have. We're waiting to hear back from the other speakers too. So, and the reason people are doing this because, it is limited space, and it's a freaking great time, that we have lined up with the events that we have lined up for people who do the 3-day VIP ticket packages and stuff like that. So people are already, I want in. And plus, when they do it year after year, they're creating bonds and memories and friendships with those other VIPs where it becomes like a tradition type of thing. And so it's awesome. We treat these people like we try to treat them all like royalty, but I just want to make sure that they have a great experience, an educational one, and try to bring something different each and every year. So that's kind of what's going on right now. We're getting snow. We're in for some snow here in Minnesota. Go figure. Minnesota is what we call it. So right now we're in a winter weather storm watch tonight all the way up until Sunday, to be honest with flurries off and on. And our tonight's guest might even be in the same weather watch as well. So with that being said, after this passes and we get some more sustainable weather where we can drive, we got a couple locations that we want to hit up and get out there and switch some cameras, some food stations, gifting stations, bait stations, or whatever you want to call them. Because I think a lot of us have cabin fever going on.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, so definitely, we had some nice days. We were in the 50s and 60s just last week, and now this. So we're hoping for more better days, and Godspeed on those.
Yes. I'm so ready to get out. I'm listening to you talking about changing camera batteries and this and that. I'm like, oh, I need to be outside. The hike to get to them is just so much fun. Just being outdoors alone is just so much fun. Like our guest last week was saying, Scott Nelson, just being out there is a good time, even if nothing happens. So
and that's the honest to God truth. I mean, when you're out in the field, so to speak, researching and nothing happens, it's never a waste of time.
Right.
Never a waste of time. Never a dull moment.
Exactly. So without delay, I know I always like to do updates because we have a lot going on ourselves. And I always like to kind of take this moment to update everybody as far as what we're doing and where we're at with our conferences and everything. So, but we have an awesome guest tonight who I'm really excited to pick his brain and get to hear what he has to say. So welcome, Dan Nedrelo.
Wow, you double did it. Good one.
She covered all the bases.
I said it wrong the first time.
Abe, great to see you. Glenn,
You
last
too.
time I think we talked was, oh my gosh, 22 or 23 up in Michigan and then over in Ohio.
It's been a while, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
When was it in 23 that we talked, or the last time we actually got together? I remember the last time we got together.
Yeah, we got together. I don't remember what year that was, but
I want to say it was 2013.
Okay, I was 13.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?
Wow.
It is amazing.
13, I mean, that'll be like 13 years in June. Holy
Yeah.
crap. That's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Wow.
Time flies when you're having fun.
That's
for
right.
sure.
That's right.
Glenn, I'll just let you go. You guys go ahead and run the show, and I'll just go yes or no. And we'll take
Okay.
it from there.
All right. So, Dan, you are Wisconsin born and trained. Yes. Your interests and activities are herpetology,
Yes.
wildlife photography,
Yes.
Sasquatch, art, Boy Scouts, 4-H, football, wrestling, weightlifting, and you have many interests as far as animals, travel, adventure, photography. However, your major focus is conservation and the education of herbs and all wildlife. You are into timber rattlesnakes, African Burmese, reticulated pythons, breeding boa constrictors. So just really quickly, are these things that you're interested in or things that you work with?
Those are things that preoccupied my life up until about 2 years ago.
Wow.
I had massive well, Abe knows I visited his family with a few little critters, and I would be the guy that would go to the kindergarten class or the senior class or the university, dragging rattlers, gators, and pythons.
Wow.
Big snapping turtles, timber rattlers. I had diamondbacks. I had just most of the North American stuff. I had one stint at a zoo. I don't think I told you about, and I worked in Missouri for a year, and they put me in charge of venomous. And so I got to play with all the cobras and mambas and pit vipers and gaboon vipers and all kinds of good fun stuff, and ended up taking cobras to summer camps and things like that. So that was quite fun for me. I finally got to play with the cobras, but I did that in my 20s, and I was doing things like I'm making handsprings and backflips and all that good stuff back then, and those days are over now. So
you want to see a backflip? I posted on I might have posted on Facebook. Out where I'm at, there's a very rocky area where I go and I hike a lot and just check out the area, kind of sneak in there at night and stuff. But we were coming down, it was very steep edge, and there's this very tiny trail, and we're walking, and all of a sudden I hear this shaking sound in the leaves, and I'm like, wait, and I looked down and I saw what I thought was a locust at first. It looked like a locust flopping around the leaves. I'm like, there's no way. That's not the time of year for locusts. And I stopped the people behind me and I'm like, wait, there's something weird. And right when they look, this snake like jumps out and takes off down the rest of the hill. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a rattlesnake. Oh my gosh. It was the rattle. I was seeing the rattle and I thought it was a locust. It was just like flopping around the leaves. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Really?
But
they tend to wake you up quickly. Yes.
Yeah. But actually, I reported it to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources because they track the movement of them because they're not super common in Ohio.
Right.
So
Right.
I reported it so they would know where it was at, and they made a location snap of it or something like that. So yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, I almost did a backflip.
We used to have 30. I don't blame you. We used to have 37 counties in Wisconsin that had Massasauga rattlers. We're down to 3.
Oh,
with viable population, and then we've also got a type of a virus that's hitting them, causing problems with respiratory infections and things like that.
My.
So it's possible within our lifetime that we will absolutely lose the viable populations left in that group. And the other critter is the timber rattler, but it's kind of interesting because, like in the state of Wisconsin at least, we've had no more than 2 people historically killed by timber rattlers, but we've had 18 people killed by white-tailed deer.
Oh my gosh.
And that does not include auto crashes.
Right.
I've hit 42 deer in my travels so far.
Oh my gosh.
I'm fortunate because I didn't have to turn any over to insurance, but my Ford Rangers and Ford F-150s looked like they'd hit deer. So I'm really lucky. I have a very wonderful mechanic who's very artistic, and he keeps me afloat. So.
My gosh! Wow.
18 white-tailed deer kills. I mean, are the hunters just putting on too much in ruts?
Basically, that's it. Basically, it's the hunter thinking he's got to slash the throat, and the adrenaline or the epinephrine from the deer causes the deer to gore the hunter. And some of these guys are in their 70s. You know, they're not physically capable of dealing with a 200-pound animal that's literally on drugs, that's doing its last death throes. And so in the course of all the millions of deer and all the thousands of hunters, that's the tally. So,
wow.
Yeah. And how many people have been killed by black bear in the history of the state? 0. Mountain lion? 0. Modern times, since the 70s, once we started with 3 timber wolves working with Dick Thiel and then eventually going to a second county, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, we're up to 1,600 timber wolves now. And back when I was in college, we had 3, and the death toll of people is 0 from them.
Wow.
So I would be much more concerned about wild dogs, human beings. Horses kill more people than all the wildlife in the United States combined when you look at the tally. So people are terrified of bear and cougar, but it's like if you look at how many people really got killed each year, 3, 4, 2, 0. You know, that's not to say that people weren't attacked and lost an eye. That happens too. But the actual, the predation of people by these animals is relatively rare. It takes a cat has got to be in a situation where it's starving or so old that it turns on humans. But that's really, really, really rare. But unfortunately, it's usually women or children who are smaller in body weight. And it's a cat that probably doesn't know how to hunt deer, and so it's probably a youngster male who's been kicked out of his territory by the older sedentary males who, this is mine, get out of here. Yeah. And of course, cougar are incredible because we've got now this last year, or the last 2 years, I think, we've got a 1,600 mile trek from South Dakota or Nebraska all the way over to Connecticut, where the individual got killed by roadkill.
Wow.
So the eastern states are getting more and more and more cougar frequencies. I've got a group actually on eastern cougar. I've got more groups than I can handle, but I keep making them anyway. But anyway, it's a way for me to learn more, and if I can teach others along the way, then that's great. And so I've got things on wildlife vocalizations and great ape research, and I've got a new group called Earthly Bear Worldwide for all 8 species, because what I want to do is eventually interact and interview all the bear researchers from Iraq to I shouldn't say that, but all the way, into the Himalayas and then Asia and Sumatra and get all these species of bear around the country. So,
wow. So you do a lot with wildlife, because even in your bio, it talks about how you work with wildlife preservation, working with the Milwaukee Public Museum. So
yes.
you are a Wisconsin
Yeah, I'm in
DNR
Wisconsin.
contract
If you look
biologist?
if you look at where Minnesota is, pardon me, and
Was.
Iowa, and you got that line, you
Yeah.
cross the Wisconsin side, you cross the Mississippi River. There's a little town called La Crosse, Wisconsin. That's where I'm based now. But I grew up in that riffless area, so it was trout streams and river bluffs. We got 17 counties that have remnant timber rattler populations, and that's basically some of the work that I did. When I ended up working with DNR, the first thing they did was give me a boat and said, go study soft shell and snapping turtles for the commercial take, because we want to regulate the take. And so I changed the shell length for the fishermen, or the commercial fishermen, to take when they trap snappers,
Wow.
12 to 16 inches. That way the giants can be giants and not be taken. And then we can have the younger ones can reproduce that are less than 12 inches long. And so that seems to work. I see they still kept that shell change, which I made in 1990. I think it was 1993.
Wow.
So then the next field season they put me on was Massasauga rattlers, which is the problem rattlesnake in the state, because of course duck hunters can't stand them because you've got your dogs, and the last thing you want is your dog envenomated by a pit viper, because it could theoretically take out the dog. So, and by the way, there's never been a human death in the United States by a Massasauga rattler, which is interesting. Although we did have one Canadian field researcher, she bought it and was bitten and unfortunately died from the consequences. So we have to take these things seriously.
Yeah.
But luckily they're not aggressive; they're just defensive. So hey,
another name for the rattlesnake is the moccasin, water moccasin that you're talking about. Is that
Massasauga swamp rattler?
Yeah, swamp rattler, and it still has a rattle on its tail.
Yeah. Huh?
Okay.
Yeah.
I must be thinking of something else then.
So the water moccasin is different. They don't have rattles.
Right. No rattles. It's a pit viper. Yeah. It's basically like an aquatic rattlesnake.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, now the beauty of cottonmouths is they will eat anything, including diamondbacks. They will eat other venomous snakes and turtles and fish and rodents and muskrats and right on down the line. And they'll get huge. The biggest one I've ever seen was pushing 4.5 feet in Florida. I was 18 at the time. Otherwise, most of them are much smaller than that. I think people kill them or they get run over in the roads because it takes them a while to cross the roads and people hit snakes. So as a result, most of them don't have a chance. So, but you get into those residual or the outback places, then you have a chance to see some giants, But,
wow. I don't want to see giant rattlesnakes, so I'll pass if I can. Thank you.
Totally understand. For some reason, I just thought they were glorious, and I studied them, and the more I got into them, the more I found they were incredible, and I learned a lot, and I tried to, I'm just trying to, my whole goal was to go into schools and camps and try to get people to not be so afraid of wildlife, so afraid that they have to shoot it or kill it.
Right.
If you learn to watch it, learn it, and understand it, you'll find yourself being so intrigued you want to get closer. And as a wildlife photographer, that was exactly it for me. I wanted to literally be close enough to see the whites of their eyes, whether it was a bear or a cat or whatever. And grizzly bear and bull sharks are my two thingies. Those are the ones that make me the most nervous. But other than that, it's people and wild dogs.
You know what? You're so right. Yep. People and wild dogs, they can be sketchy.
Yeah.
So you've gotten to travel to some pretty cool places, because your first big trip was to Australia and Tasmania, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and you've also published 100 books and magazines.
Pictures in them. Yeah. I've
Okay,
done some writing. My photo partner, fortunately, I ran into a guy named Al Sheldon when I was 23, and we both thought exactly the same. So all of a sudden, we just hooked up and we started traveling the United States together. And that was really nice because that way we only needed half the amount of gas. And we just blasted Florida and the Midwest, and got into got Tennessee, Kentucky, and then west the Rocky Mountains, Yellowstone, that type of thing. So
wow.
that was really nice.
I'm curious, like, what piqued your interest into Sasquatch? Because eventually it led there, right?
I started in 5th grade. It was my 5th grade teacher was cool. She would do weird, bizarre, unusual things that probably caused her a lot of grief with other teachers, but we dug her. And she mentioned the word one day, abominable snowman. Now, I'm a really old guy, so it turns out that being 10 years old in 5th grade happened to be 1967. So after finding out about abominable snowman, I ran into a little book called Ivan T. Sanderson's Abominable Snowman Legend Come to Life. And I read that. I've got the copy that I used to check out in high school and elementary school from that library, which is kind of interesting.
That's so cool.
So I read every damn word over and over and over and over. And I was in my early 20s before I finally got my hands on John Green's Apes Among Us. And that was my new Bible in a sense. And I literally studied every paragraph on every page from, the Pacific Northwest to Florida. And interestingly enough, eventually, in 2000, I ended up in the BFRO. My mom passed. My sister made a bet. She said, "Hey, I bet you don't become computer literate, and I bet you don't chase the giants through network and professionally. And you can't let your little sister win a bet." So I tried, and I started asking and pestering a particular guy who turned out to be Ron Schaffner, who was Matt Moneymaker's partner. He was all over the place online, and he had some Wisconsin reports. I was asking him about them, and after a while, he started writing me, "Who the hell are you?" And so I basically told him, and he said, do you have a resume? And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Can we see it?" And I said, "Sure." And the next thing I knew, I was in the BFRO.
Nice.
And I was there for 4 years. I did a pretty good job for the most part. Toward the end, my typing went from 35 words a minute to 105. I gained 50 pounds because it was so exciting to sit on the telephone and talk to all these people, hop on the vehicle and point it in a certain direction and get your ass in the field as hard and as fast as you could go. And so I ended up the first year in Oklahoma, Iowa. The second year I made Tennessee, Indiana, and the third year I was in California documenting the Sasquatch International Symposium for Matt. And the next year I think I was doing Monster Quest and the Cumberland Beast with Doug Highcheck.
Wow.
So it was kind of funny because I met both those guys together at Doug's house. Doug set it up for me, knowing I didn't know Matt was going to be there. Walked in, and there's Matt, who I'd talked to a million times on the phone. It was kind of comical because my grandmother at the time was, she was probably in her middle 70s. She would field the phones for me from witnesses. So I would come home and she'd have so-and-so on the phone for 30 minutes saying, "Well, the black one's kicking the dog and the big brown one's looking in the window, but she feels a lot more comfortable now." Here you go, Dan. So she would like desensitize some of the people that I eventually ended up driving around and meeting. So
wow.
So it was I loved my time in the BFRO, but I needed to. I was just, let's say, maybe a little too curious and a little too furious. And Matt's comments were fun. He said, basically, "I don't care what you do. Just don't piss anybody off." Well, inevitably, I ended up doing that, and you get a lot of voices and a lot of opinions, and I found I needed some time away, so I took 4 years off, and then I came back in 2008, met up with a gal in Georgia who had activity on her property, and we turned that into a 4-year study. And by that time, I was starting to network online again and starting to create groups and reach out, and hooked up with Abe and numerous other people, and some of the BFRO guys, and many of them are still close friends, even though I was in from 2000 to 2004. So,
Wow. So can you tell us a little bit about that 4-year study? I mean, what did it consist of, and where did it finally end up?
This was halfway down Georgia on a private property. Basically, we had individuals in and around there. We started out by putting a metal wire up in the air and hanging things from it, hoping that we would maybe keep it away from raccoons and things of that nature. And we ended up putting a CD out, and the CD was end up being taken off and put into the bucket that was up 7 feet up off the ground. Wow. Well, it wasn't too long before we started getting footprints. We'd get 15-inch prints, 14-inch prints, and eventually we got an 18-inch print. And then we started recording. And so we got numerous recordings. And one of the highlights was I had sent her a parabolic microphone one night, and she opened it and said, "What do you want me to do?" And I said, "Let's just put it out." And she was getting activity on her front porch. And she said, "Aren't you afraid they're going to take it or break it?" And I'm like, "I think it's too new. So let's try it." So I put the parabolic on the table and put the recorder out, set it, so she's recording. And I take that back. I bet we weren't yet. I think we just wanted to show it to them. So basically, we're talking, and she goes, "I hear her. I think they're here." I'm like, "Okay." She goes, You want me to scare them away and go get the?" And I'm like, No, let's let them look at it. And so we talked for about 15 minutes. I go, "Okay, about now, why don't you make some noise so they know you're coming to the door?" So she did. And she opens the door and she goes out. And here the microphone had been pulled out of the dish, and so it was hanging by the wire, just swinging at the base of the table.
Oh no!
So that was pretty cool. Now after that, I heard her squeal, and I'm like, "Oh, are you okay, or what's going on?" And it turns out that she had a tarp at the base of the steps, and it had just rained the day before, and so one of what I considered to be one of the females had stepped on that. And the reason I say females, it was a smaller print. Now we never sexed this individual, but it was more of a narrower foot, and it was under 14 inches. So it could have been a juvenile or teenager too. But they stepped on in the water and left a track going up the steps to where the parabolic mic was. So that was kind of interesting. And as far as I saw my first Sasquatch tracks down there with her, I did go down and visit for 4 or 5 days at one point in time in 2008 or 2009. It was 2008. And then she ended up marrying and moving out and going to Idaho. Unfortunately, she passed away with COVID. It's very sorry to lose her. But I had a couple of home situations going on, one in Tennessee, one in Virginia. I was able to visit the Tennessee one, but we had 2 big males that would leave tracks, and we got butt prints for both of them. I remember one was 36 inches wide and 34 inches wide on the other. And so that was really interesting, but they were both 17 inches and as far as track length. And the way we got that was we had a frost one night. So in the morning when she got up, she looked out around the corner of the house, and here's these 17-inch prints there. So that pretty well took care of some of the questions we had. We were able to get recordings there. We had the tracks at that location were 17-inch, 14-inch, 12-inch, and 7-inch. We called the 7-inch dude Sticky because everywhere he went, there was holes like he had a stick near his prints. And she was dying of ovarian cancer, so she only gave me 2 years before she passed away. But I had another researcher from Maryland that would come over there, and he would pick up on some of the things that we were doing. So that was really good. Well, unfortunately, we didn't get any video because of problem situations and coordinating all the methods that we would all like to have employed. But so it goes. I learned a lot from that. In Tennessee, it was a really, really neat situation. They had guard dogs, Dobermans. They just moved in from Alaska, and they thought, okay, something's pillaging the chicken coop. What's going on? So one night they went outside. The Dobermans refused to go except for the lead dog. He came, but he stayed behind the master. The master heads out toward the chicken coop, and there's reflective greenish yellow eyes up on top of the chicken coop. Well, that's easy. That's a bobcat. No problem. And the problem was when the big yellow eyes or greenish yellow eyes moved off the chicken coop, and they were still over 7 feet up in the air. Now things are a little different. And as he pursued, it turned and ran and took out a fence. And so he turned to his wife and he said, about the only thing that we got that I know of that would do that would be a grizzly. And we ain't got grizzlies in Tennessee. So that's how that started. And I ended up going down there, having some experiences. One of the coolest things was we found up at the top of the hill, they had a cave. And this cave was positioned so that if you were to stand in front of the cave, you could look down the hill and see all the activity in the yard. But when you're down in the yard and look up, you can't see from that spot. And so at one point, a big rock hauled up from the stream covered with moss was laid at the mouth entrance of that cave, which is great because now you can sit in a hot day in Tennessee and look down and have the view and have cool air coming out on your back.
Wow.
So that was some of the interesting things there. I'll let you ask another question because I can go and go here.
Hey, have you got anything? I mean, I could keep asking questions because go ahead, Abe.
I was just going to say, Dan, he's like the epitome of the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps going and going, which is a great thing. God dang, Dan, you've done a lot in your time. Where you were at in Tennessee, was that any place where the Carter incident was at?
No.
Okay.
It wasn't. I don't know how close it was because I never found out the precise. I did know at one time pretty much where the Carter location was. But back in those days, we didn't really take the Carter incident situation serious. Now, I've since met Janice and had a real good talk with her in a number of different locations. The last time I spoke in Tennessee, she was there 2 or 3 years ago. And so I got to know her pretty well that way. And then one of her field guys has invited me down to do some field work with him. And so I'm really looking forward to that at some point. Where the location was it was south of Clarksville, west of Nashville. I have to check my notes to get the exact county because I've been to Tennessee a number of times since, both speaking and then actually twice because I spoke for the BFRO at one of their expeditions down there. I've never had any activity in Tennessee except for that one spot. Basically, I had a snap branch out of a snapped branch out of a ravine during daylight. And then one morning we sat, I was working with Ricky Idlet, who Matt connected me with, who's become a long life brother. He was like the head engineer for the Mississippi Queen riverboat. And so he's a riverboat man. But we were sitting talking with the homeowner at the time, and all of a sudden you could hear something coming up the dry bed. And the dogs would be like, as it came up the dry bed, the dogs' heads would turn. And it came all the way up to the end of the dry bed and just stayed there. And then after about 15 minutes, it turned and went back, and you could hear it go back. We didn't rush over to look. Last thing I wanted to do is cause any incident that would possibly affect the way that the interactions were going with the landowners and the presence of the big fellas. And she was feeding them bits and pieces, small gifts. We had a little monkey puppet that she would take an apple and put up the monkey and set it on a chair in the granary. And then the next morning, that cute little monkey puppet would be sitting so nicely on the chair, but no apple. And this was repeated time after time after time. And it took us forever to get prints. Finally got prints, and then eventually we found out we had a family there. But there were a lot of vocalizations that were described. We did get hair, but of course, back in 2002, 2003, it came back human contaminated, as, per se, the conversation that y'all had with Doug Hychek regarding his evaluation of how it works and where we are with Homo sapiens or some sort of similar taxonomy that would be a different genus, probably the same family we're in regarding these big guys. So I found a spot in Wisconsin that I started studying in 2010. When I was in BFRO, I didn't hardly have anything happen locally. I couldn't figure out where these guys were, but I ended up going to Iowa, and it happened to be 9/11. I woke up 9/11 in Iowa because I'd spent the whole night super sleuthing on a private property near a railroad track. And the young couple were originally from Tennessee, had experiences there, and claimed experiences in Iowa. And they kept looking in the trees and kept telling me they're in the trees and they're big and they're in the trees. So that was my first experience hearing about that situation. I got vocals, I got odors, I couldn't find tracks. So I felt kind of frustrated there. I did some work in Floyd County, nearby Iowa, and it turned out that the individual that I was speaking with, he said, basically, he had a number of experiences. His first year that he had experience, he was called from school with his brother to go over to work with his father. And the idea was, I want you guys to see this. And they came in and found human footprints that came out of the forest, went across the sand, went and walked by a little pond, and in the pond there were frog legs kicking. The frogs were eaten, but the frog legs were still kicking. And there were little tracks and mama tracks. And so he saw those. Now, later on, as he grew up, he didn't have any experiences until one night he was with his sister and they were fishing catfish, and a big black man came wading down the stream, walked right in front of him and just kept going down the stream. And so his comments to me were, and I've talked to other people about this, and the question is, do you know why people don't go catfishing at night no more around here? Because of the big black men that walk the streams at night. So
wow,
that was interesting. That hit me hard right there. Legends of Boggy Creek, etc.
In Floyd, Iowa, huh? So would that be the western part of Floyd?
Floyd County. And if you look, they've taken some of the reports down, but there's a couple. There's at least one or two left there.
Because that would be the western portion of Floyd.
There's two main streams in that county, and it would be one or the other. I forget. I think you get that information by looking at the report. So
okay,
that's interesting.
Well, I ask because I go down there. I go east of Mason to a place just northwest of Norris Springs, which Norris Springs falls on the border, but is inside of Floyd County.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, we know that if these guys are governed by environmental law, then like all the other creatures that are on the increase, I mean, Wisconsin's up to 25,000 black bear. And I'd mentioned 1,600 timber wolves. We've never lost our cougar, although that's a socio-political situation there. Well, we don't have any cats in this state except for males that come through, but of course they would never stay here or have kittens. I know of like 7 incidents of kittens since 1984 in Wisconsin.
Wow.
But I'm not sharing that information. That's private on
Right.
the people that have them on their property. And eventually the state will publicly announce, oh, by the way. But, if we can't handle cougar expansion, how the hell are we going to handle ape men? So most of the situation is pretty privately guarded, I'd say. Getting back to the location that I worked at for 12 years, finally lost the landowner about 18 months ago, but she lived on the property alone. She would throw her leftover food, usually salad, over the fence regularly. Never had a problem with knocking on the window. She did have a problem with screams at the door one time, and they pulled the stripping up. It takes a human hand to pull the stripping of the door out, which happened. She would regularly. I would have to climb up and put the air ducts, or not the leaf ducts, back together because there'd be screens on that. And they would take the screens out and lay them along the edge of the house. They'd pick the tables up and lean them against the house, pick up the chairs, lean them against the house, pick up heavy statues, move them around the yard. I found a beautiful glass vase. This woman was a collector of magnificent items. And this beautiful glass vase was picked up off the rock ledge and laid gently in the bird bath.
Wow.
Wasn't hurt at all. I knew something was going on when one of the bricks alongside the house was moved to, instead of being flush, it was moved to the 5 o'clock position. So I moved it to the 6 o'clock position where it was flush with the other bricks. The next morning, it was moved to the 7 o'clock position. So I thought, okay, youngster, maybe can we play? So I grabbed some pallet type, or some of the I forget the word I want to use, but section from a bathroom floor with some of those platelets, and I put them on a rock, and then I would set pennies up in a design, pennies and dimes and nickels. They would be moved. Well, that could still be potentially fox or jay, corvid, like a crow or a blue jay, but they would get moved to the side vertically. And my friend Keith Bearden told me, well, he used really nice china plates, and they would take the china plates and move them vertically. So this was like parallel to that, except it was just pennies. Well, what else can we do? One of my research buddies from Connecticut had sent me some rocks that he got in return during gift exchanges. So I put those out. They were taken. And then I would put other things out. They would get moved, taken, brought back sometimes. But on the trading block, the coolest thing that happened was when I set myself on fire in 2018, that's a long story, I ended up with skin graft surgery in the hospital. So I was in the burn center in Madison, Wisconsin for 17 days.
Oh my God.
Finally got out limping around, and it still gives me trouble because I picked up an infection from it when I was in the Missouri situation. Is a brand new situation that's ongoing, and I'll explain that in a little bit. I started that in 2019, but I come back to the trading block on this private property. And Abe, I told you a little bit about that private property when you and I did our interview, because that was what I focused on, because I got that vocal. It was my first Wisconsin vocalization, which sounded something like, and just literally went across the valley. And apparently it was utilized to shut up 2 arguing canines, a coyote and a dog, up the hill. And I recorded it and I sent it to Michael Johnson, SIR in Colorado, and another friend of mine who passed away eventually, Sava Mathau. And those guys, of course, are very familiar with what was going on. I didn't see the call maker, the sound maker, but that vocal was tremendously low-based and impressive. And as soon as Mike heard it, he called me back and he goes, Daniel, congratulations. They do that here too. And of course, I didn't get to see what made it, but I don't have an answer. And it sounded almost human-like. So the strangest thing on the trading block was that I got right after I was burned was I got an orange piece of plastics filter from maybe a lawnmower or something. Don't know. That upset the landowner. Where'd that come from? I don't want that on my property. Get that out of here. And she put it on my vehicle, so that took care of the footprint situation or fingerprint situation. And then sometime that week, I looked again, and here is burdock, like a tincture. And I'm looking at the burdock, and I'm thinking, okay, now what's the use here? What's the medical situation? The roots were ripped off. So I check it out, and the first thing I find out is the roots are cancer inhibitors. Apparently, I didn't need that. Thank you. Next thing I check out. The most typical use of burdock is the topical use of it on affected skin areas that have had significant problems, especially burns.
Interesting.
So I'm like, who put that there? Well, I found out later who could have put it there, because I did get footprints, I get wood knocks, I get other vocalizations. We did get 8-inch prints over by the coins. And then luckily we put out a game cam. And everybody has different versions of how you should research, how you should have a mindset, how you should do this, how you shouldn't do that. And my philosophy has been, okay, I'm going to get killed by guilt by association, because I'm talking to everybody. I understand that not everybody's going to hold the same view that I have. Not everybody's going to interpret shit the same way that I do. We're all going to have different views, opinions, experiences. So I started listening to everybody. And one of my friends, Miss Arla Williams, told me, talk to the forest. Talk to them. You'll be surprised. And I'll tell you right now, I've been surprised. I've had things happen to me that as a scientist, biologist, I can't explain what's going down, except it's repetitive stuff other people say. And I can get into that if you want. But
I want to jump backwards, if you don't mind, for a moment, because
pardon me, I get yucky.
No, that's okay. You mentioned burdock root, but in a tincture form. So did they like mix up like a tincture, like with water and stuff in it, or was this like burdock root chunks?
This was like burdock woven somehow. I've got a photograph of it.
That's interesting.
I can scare that up for you at some point.
Yeah.
Definitely. But this was a unique situation, because my thoughts are, what happened? Did they smell this? Because I know their olfactory system is majestic. At least the reports are suggestive of that, because I can't remember who I was talking to recently, but they saw like the adult might have been a podcast or something, but it was like the adult was just arms back, head up in the air, nostrils flaring, just sucking air. And then the kid was like maybe a 12-year-old sized juvenile was on the ground just sniffing where the guy sat on a log. So I know that they're utilizing olfactory significantly.
Yeah.
At least some. And of course we all have different capabilities. They might too. As far as what else happened there, that was probably the big highlight. Oh, I was going to say game cam, wasn't I?
Yeah.
I will fill that in. On my book, and I promised Meldrum I would do one. Jeff Meldrum at one point invited me to be on his board of consultants with his Journal of Hominid Inquiry. And I had planned to do that, but he got real busy and we never connected after that. And it wasn't a position of being paid. So, I figured, well, you probably found somebody else to do that. But we had some great conversations in Nebraska when we worked together in 2018 or 19, because I had just seen him in 2018 before I got to meet Shane Carpenter, who was the lead for Missouri Ozark Mountain Sasquatch, who I ended up taking a front biologist position with. But
Nice.
And that's an incredible series of things that happen there. As far as the game camera goes, we had a game camera sat 5 feet 3 inches off the ground. And when I set it up, I simply said, okay, we have cougar here. We have black bear here. This is what it's for. If you want to be in the picture, feel free. And you feel stupid saying things like that. But I don't know who knows what. And if Coco the gorilla could sign 1,000 words, and if she had the anatomical capability she probably could have said those 1,000 words. Well, I don't know how smart or not smart Sasquatches are, but they've certainly bypassed our technological efforts to nail them simply like a great ape, or primitive men. And I got a silhouette shot of an individual that was looking down into the camera. The flash didn't go off, so it was silhouette. Don't understand how or why, but my guess is, and it's a guess, that the individual would have been in the 7-foot arena to stand there and look down at the camera.
Yeah.
And that happened in 2020.
Oh, wow.
And a big surprise. And unfortunately, the landowner, she cleaned the SD card before I could get my hands on it. Her idea was, well, that's just a dog. And maybe it is just a dog, but why does it look like a Samoan from the head and shoulders up with
Right.
wavy hair who's like surfing on the ocean in the wind, So,
Yeah.
and I can make that picture available when the book comes out.
So I thought of this when you were talking about how it was something that was standing over the camera and the flash didn't go off for some reason. It kind of made me think of the whole Bigfoot being able to, blend in or almost disappear. And I know that a lot of wild animals, you can look and not see them unless you're, looking right at them. So what do you think about the whole Bigfoot camouflage thing? Do you think that there's anything to that? Do you think that there's something they're able to do? Or is it just one of those things where, they're very good at being camouflage?
I don't have enough information for all the answers, but I do know that one of the common behaviors that they have is to immediately drop to the ground all the way. So if you've got 2 feet worth of grass, he's in the grass. And most people aren't thinking about that. And he's gone. No, he's right there laying in the grass. One of the fellows out of Texas nearly stepped on one that was imitating a log. There was a beautiful report out of VI, Vancouver Island, where the local guy had his son-in-law, newly married to his daughter, with, and I think it was in maybe Bindernagel's book, and God bless John. But anyway, they're driving along, they look, and there's this giant man laying in the ditch, and the guy freaks out. He's like, well, geez, shouldn't we help him? Shouldn't we? What? There's a guy laying in the ditch. And the father's like, you son obviously don't know our ways here. And you're obviously very unfamiliar with men like that, so we'll just continue on. And,
wow.
So I think that has a lot to do with it. The disappearing. There's a beautiful report out of southeastern Iowa, Abe's probably familiar with the turkey hunter. And basically the dude is wearing the suit that people wear. So what's the name of the ghillie suit? Okay. So he's wearing a ghillie suit and combination of that and a blind, so we shouldn't be easily seen. But this individual's walking down the bottom of the stream run, and he gets closer, and all of a sudden it stares right at him. And he's looking right at it, and he's freaking out because now he knows, it knows he's there. And of course, if you're convinced there's nothing like this, and you see one and it's daylight, you have to be literally, losing it. And so what's hilarious is once it realizes he's there, he's clicking a little bit, so he's got a weapon. Everybody knows what a weapon is. We've got plenty of time to watch hunters do their thing with deer and turkey, etc. It shifts somehow where the hair changes a little bit. And now, as it freezes, it becomes increasingly difficult to see. It's right there, but the description appeared as though it was so camouflaged in the way that the hair reflections from the light were that you could barely see it. And we always hear, you'll never see them because they blend in so well. And really, that's something that continues to come up. So as far as the actual disappearance, I've got friends who are 100% convinced they've seen this. I've been told it from people that reside in different states around the country. I haven't seen it yet, but then I've only seen 3 Sasquatch so far. So, I'm not a bookend on all those things, but something that did happen to me was one winter, 23, I just got back from both Missouri and Oklahoma, and I was visiting a good friend of mine, and we walked 8 miles that day. When I came out of her house at night, we had cattle going off. There weren't cattle there, so something was imitating cattle. We have a pretty good idea who that was. Then we headed for the woods about a quarter mile away, and it's 15-mile-an-hour winds, 23 degrees, 2 days after Christmas. And we're walking along, and all of a sudden, I'm smelling flowers. What in the flying hell? There is no explanation for this whatsoever. So I look over at her and I go, "Hey, do you smell anything?" And she smiles and says, "Dan, I smell exactly what you smell. I smell flowers." And I'm like, that's one of the most unusual things I've ever experienced. But it didn't stop there. I pulled out my recorder to talk into it to describe the situation, and it went bzz, done.
Oh, wow.
I pulled out the secondary recorder to manually talk in it, which is how you talk manually, right? No, I don't know why I put those together. But anyway, I'm talking, and the second one, I realized that one flipped out. Zzz, non-functional. They're like on, but they're non-functional. And I'm like, I'm almost freaking out, but finally I get to experience what I read about in the pre-internet descriptions of battery failure, etc. And I talked to numerous other people. I'm not going to give names, but they too have experienced some of this. And I think you guys were talking about it in Doug's setup or with Pops. And then, so what happens is I'm looking at her and she goes, "Oh, by the way, I just got pushed." And I'm like, "What?" "I just got pushed. No big deal." Okay. And then we get wood knocks. So I'm like, okay. And this isn't trees popping from temperatures.
Yeah.
These are wood knocks.
Interesting.
It's not a pileated woodpecker. And then she freaks out. I'm like, what? And I look over and there's this bright blue ball of light. And it's zipping through the woods. And I actually see it. I got zero explanation. I'm a biologist. I'm not a ball of light specialist. I got no clue, man. But that was interesting to have all those events, 1, 2, 3, 4, all lay out together, you know?
Yeah.
That
I
was
mean, I know that you guys are not very much into the paranormal scene, but that to me sounds somewhat paranormal. But a
yeah,
lot of people describe these balls of light in Bigfoot areas. They go
right,
by multiple names, you know,
right.
and I've talked about it before on the show. They're called Ignis Fatuus fairy lights. Let me see what else. Jack-o'-lanterns, where the story of the jack-o'-lantern actually are derived from, was these floating balls of light.
Yeah,
And it seems like a lot of times they correlate with Bigfoot areas.
I agree. I've read plenty. I
Yeah.
also noticed that Matt took the time to come out and publicly declare there's an association with orbs and Sasquatches. So that's, what's the science of this? I've got no clue. I'm studying things that are generally accepted as possibilities. Are often associated with great apes or people or physical things like tracks, which, by the way, is my big emphasis right now. Interestingly enough, I had one other situation that happened in September in Jackson County with one of our get-togethers last September. And I'm going to tell you because I think you enjoy the paranormal aspect. This is either coincident, and I've had a number of things that have happened to me that I don't feel real spectacular about sharing publicly because, again, people are judging us all the time, whether we're whether we're honest, whether we're somebody worth talking to, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of judgment on our character, and character assassination is something that it comes pretty easy in this field. But anyway, what happened was that particular night, we had 15 people total, and some of them were in the BFRO. Some of them, and the only reason I say that is because I'm trying to hook up with as many people as I can in all aspects of life and every organization to learn as much as I can. And if I can help somebody along the way, I'm up for that. So anyway, there were 3 of us left. And it happened to be John Montoya and his gal April Gable and Mike Hagee. I probably butchered his last name. Sorry, Mike. And Mike asked us, "You want to go to the edge of the woods and listen?" Yeah, we're going to do that. I decided, no, I'm going to stay right here. And if you guys go, maybe I got a chance at something. Off they went. I tried to do something a little different, and I've got friends that have had experiences or claim experience like this, and I've also got family who have had experiences like this, so I thought I'd try it. As they took off, I'm sitting there for a minute at the fire. Everybody's gone. And approximately 10 o'clock, I go, all right, I'm here alone. This is perfect. If you're here, can you give me a sign? But I didn't say it. I thought it. And 1 to 3 seconds later, I got the most beautiful whoop
Oh, nice.
across the meadow, a 10th of a mile away, in the pines in response. Now, coincidence or, verification? I don't know. But I made a mistake. I was too happy to follow up. And what I'd been recommended to do was, when that happens, tell them how wonderful it was, which it really was, because I've heard 100 whoops online. That was my only second whoop in the state of Wisconsin or anywhere, and it was absolutely beautiful, very female, I'm like, wow, thanks, And instead of responding the way I should have and said, wow, so nice, can you do it again? I was so happy I forgot to do that. And now that should be an automatic.
Yeah.
You gotta thank them.
Experience. Do it again, please. We love that. Thank you. I've got a friend who is just a dear friend, and she's in the organization, and she she's relayed some experiences she's had by just asking them and gotten responses. I work with Shane Carpenter over in Missouri, and we've got a clan over there. I don't know what the sizes are lately, but the big male is a 23, false 23, had 16-inch print, female 14. Then we had a 10.25-inch print and a new 6-inch print, and the other two 10 inches are gone. But anyway, in that group, years before, we had a friend come over and make a request to the woods, and by golly, if they didn't get a response, and I've had rocks thrown at me there. That's where I got my first visuals walking at night at 2:30 in the morning. And there's a picture I would love to have you show. That's an illustration of the juvenile from Sibylla.
Okay. So let me make sure I got the right one.
Reddish is fine. Dark one doesn't matter. They're both the same. Yeah, that guy. Okay, this is Nobby, and he's from Oklahoma. And one day, Sibylla got a phone call from one of the BFRO investigators and said, "Hey, I'm looking at one right now. Are you ready to draw?" And she said, "Yeah." And she drew this illustration from this description of him looking at it live. And so to me, and he was about 6 feet tall, to me, this is the most accurate illustration that she has. So on the individual that I got to see, we were all arguing a little bit about it, and Shane wanted to go see him close. So we guided him in, and he got to 7 feet from this individual, and then eventually even sat down. And it was approximately 150 pounds. It was dropping tracks about 10.25 inches. And this is the picture that he picked out that was the closest matched what he was looking at. But ours was black-haired and darker.
Okay. So that's this one then.
Yeah. So, which is actually the same shot, but that's the way that looks. He said there was a little bit of difference in the eyes, and there was more hair on his individual. But other than that, it was like a really close deal. And so my interests are, we need more witness descriptions with technical descriptions so we can get more of this, just to give us a better idea. And I'd mentioned I was getting into footprints. My curiosity is, if you look at Sibylla's work, or some of the work from the past, from Alex Evans, some of the other new artists, there's some really, really good work, And we obviously have different phenotypes. We've got some that look like gorillas with incisors that look very, very great ape. I've had people literally ready to throat punch me, telling me, "It's a great ape." It's a great ape. And then I've got other people telling me, "Okay, it's a caveman." Got friends in Ohio that have seen cavemen in ape bodies, but it's like a Neanderthal face. If you listen to Fred Roll up in Alaska, he's got approximately 275 reports. I've listened to every one, and most of them have Neanderthal faces, but very, very great ape-like bodies, at least with their mobility. Some of them have Native American-looking faces. What's going on? Out in Washington, Barb Shoup, her first observation was great ape. And a friend of ours did the illustration. It looks like a mountain gorilla. And she told me her first thought was, how is there a gorilla here? What zoo did that get out of? Totally convinced it was a gorilla and not a Sasquatch. In the meantime, I've hooked up with a number of Native American people as much as I can to learn their philosophies, their thoughts, their experiences. And one of my partners is Mitch Wiley, whose mother is 75% Lakota, Angelique Benham, and they have Legacy Discoveries, and I'm an associate researcher with them, and they live in Idaho. And I've had some real unusual experiences with Angelique as well. She's an amazing Sasquatch magnet, I would say. But long story short, the first one she saw looked human. she was in a kayak and she came around the corner and there's this big, tall human there. And she just, no problem. And she was kayaking closer. And all of a sudden she realized he was covered with hair. So if you listen to some of the interviews that some of the guys like Tristan, I can't remember Tristan's last name, but there are Sandy Nelson and Barb Shoop and numerous other people out there in Washington. They're describing and sharing some of their footprints. They're much, much more narrow. Much, much more narrow. And this seems to jive with a more of a human Caucasian type physique of a, if you want, Sasquatch. Certainly a hairy biped, but the variation between these things is amazing. Dave Bacara, who's got the Expedition Museum in Georgia, he was describing a 3-toed individual from Ohio. And there wasn't an anomaly or a defect in the foot, 3 toes, grasping capability, able to climb, come out of a tree. Totally described by a child. And I just had Dan Benoit, or I can't pronounce, Dan, I probably butchered your name.
Benoit.
Thank you. He just sent me some tracks from, came out of Pennsylvania, and they were all 3-toed tracks. So it's like, I think we just got a fraction of what there is to get. And I've got a pretty good network. So my philosophy was, grab all the prints you can get, bring them in, change the format, archive them, rephotograph them, turn them up to a level where we can use CSI research with David Segan, the forensic scientist out of Atlanta, for example, and numerous other people that might be interested. So I started that 2 weeks ago, hot and heavy. It's going great. I'm getting responses from all over the country now. My goal is every state, and then all the states and 13 states and territories from Canada, and try to just isolate on as many human beings as I can find to network. And I'm not asking for your whole collection, but can you give me a couple of relatively sharp resolution samples that I can work with, so that I can because we're looking for anomalies in the foot, such as scars, skin explosions, things that would identify individuals, so that over time, that particular foot, as it grows, still can be identified with those particular aspects. And if you blow the picture up big enough and is professional enough, you have a chance to utilize that as an identifier. That's just some of my philosophy.
That's really cool. I don't want to jump backwards, but to jump backwards. So you were talking about the 3-toed prints in Ohio of the smaller Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't openly talk about this because it's so weird, but me and my son, my oldest son, he was probably about 13, 14 at the time when we saw this, but we always would be out hiking in the woods, always. And we were out one day, just him and I, and we were in the woods, and all of a sudden he goes, "What's that?" And we heard something in the tree, and we're both looking up to the tree, and all of a sudden we watch, and I swear it looked like a monkey jump from one tree to the other. It had a tail. It had a tail. And I'm like, and I am still convinced that it was this pet monkey that somebody had that got loose. But when you talk about that, and then I've heard of other people talking about when they're very small like that and they're in the trees, they have a tail that eventually kind of just shortens up and kind of goes away or is hidden by the hair. And I don't know anything about that, but it was just weird because, it was like a monkey. It looked like a monkey. Its tail wasn't super long, but we both saw it and we know what we saw. It was just weird.
Yeah. Well, I've got no explanation without seeing it, but
very weird.
There's the pre-internet stuff. John Green's descriptions of Louisiana, there were like red-haired men of the woods and then small reddish monkeys in Louisiana that didn't match up. Florida, of course, is a international exotic dumping place for all the exotic pet trade. So, that's a factor. But then we've got skunk ape down there. David Shealy's going along with 4 toes on them. I'm pretty tight with Marie DeMont, who runs the Mid-Florida Sasquatch research group, and she keeps a pretty tight lid on that. And I'm fascinated with Florida. I've got my sister lives there, and she said, I shouldn't say anything more than that. But anyway, let's just say that there's a lot of interesting things in Florida. And we'll say that who knows what we're still missing, because I did get some oddball tracks. I have a Dogman mystery group, and I took a lot of grief for that. But my philosophy of having it was, let's try to get some Sasquatch data from it, because as you know, when people have an experience, you're almost always scared in many cases, especially if they're convinced that these things don't live or aren't real, and then all of a sudden you see one, it's got to freak you out. And then if you're scared and you have minimal amount of time to see it, and it's distant and it's dark, so you have limited light, and then you get people saying, well, I know it was a dog man. Well, I just know it was a dog man. Well, that doesn't help me too much, because emotions should be separated from damn fact. Okay, so let's play scientist on this and look at the trail, look at the gait, look at the consistency of the foot and the toe movement, the heel drag, all that fun stuff, and then we can maybe come to a conclusion. So I've been hunting for tracks from upright canines, which, by the way, Dogman is a cover for hyena things and raccoon fingered coyote, German Shepherd like canines, and then giant canines that look like Sasquatches with wolf faces, and then you got your werewolf factor and Dogman factor, and
you got all these variants.
Yeah, so there's probably 3, 4, 5 different entities all under the cover of Dogman. But to find tracks, in 10 years of work in that group, I have not found I've got beaver tracks, I got gator tracks, I got a lot of other stuff, but I don't have what I consider legitimate canine tracks from something that's massive, 700, 800, 900 pounds like a Sasquatch. And I've got a good friend who was a police officer at the time. He saw a giant one, the lights of his patrol car lit it up, and it was eating a deer.
Yeah.
And so, that's a legitimate situation. He saw a wolf type canine face. I'm not going to sit here and say these things are real, but these things are real. Now, what they are, I don't know. Because I've got friends that made me promise, don't tell anybody I told you this. But then people do that with Sasquatch experiences too. So I'm just trying to take notes and learn and calm people down and help them out as much as I can and be there when I can. And I will say that my friend in Georgia, she did call one night. She was angry. It was pushing 3:00 in the morning. And I'm like, what's going on? Are you okay? And she goes, I'm so mad at you. And I'm like, oh God, what did I do now? And she goes, you didn't tell me about their eyes. I said, well, talk to me. She goes, you know how you said we've only got one 18-inch print? There were 3 of them, and they were looking in my window. And I'm like, okay. Oh. And I said, well, why are you upset? Because the one in back, his eyes lit up and lit up my room. Oh. You never told me this. How come? Well, to be honest with you, I didn't necessarily believe it at the time. And I'm trying to figure out how am I going to calm her down, because she's ready to pop. And it's pushing 3:00 in the morning, And finally, I lied. I eventually told her what happened so she knows why I did what I did. But I lied, and I said, well, I just really didn't think you were ready for this. And I apologize. And then that calmed her down, and then we were able to talk about it and get more of a description. I've had other people tell me similar situation. I haven't even seen eye shine. I don't shine. I had one come up behind me and sneeze on that private property one time, right after a big coyote group came through. And I recorded the coyote group. I sat for 45 minutes waiting for this big guy, this sneezer, to make another sound. Never did. But years later, we found a place along the fence where something's always standing. And the reason, because in the fence, two cute little puppy dogs, little house dogs. And apparently it would always come to that point, which is where I heard it sneeze from, and wear the flowers out so flowers wouldn't grow there because it would stomp them out. So that was interesting. So,
that is interesting.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of something else that's helpful here, but I'll let you ask because I feel like I've been on a train. Oh yeah, a train.
Okay, scared.
A train. One of the most beautiful reports out of Illinois is from Stan Courtney. He ran into a guy who made a claim that he said, "I've seen him stand along the railroad tracks and hop trains."
What?
And he goes, "Well, how do you know they're hopping trains?" Because we knew that they would hop like on the back of a van or a truck and ride the truck up the mountain. I've got reports like that. So I'm not too surprised about that. But this guy made the claim to Stan, "Hey, they're riding trains." And Stan's like, "Yeah, right." Well, finally, the one guy did see. He found an intersection where the train went by, and he went out and he stood there and he watched and he saw the train go by, and in between two cars, here's a giant pile of hair. And it went by fairly fast. So he reported to Stan. So he and Stan went to that intersection, and this is written down. And Stan goes with him, and they're at this intersection. And Stan's like, "Well, I'll watch the side to the left. You watch the side to the right and yell at me if you see one." And by God, if one didn't come through, and they both saw it.
No way. That's so cool.
Is that not cool? And a lot
I've
of
never
people,
heard of them
most
vehicle hopping.
people haven't. And a lot of people would blow that off. That's ridiculous. Is it? I don't think it's ridiculous. I'd do that. No problem. And so I think they're doing shit that people would just be amazed at. I think they watch us. They know when we drive what, when we come back. That's hours of opportunity for them to scout or be active in areas. It's like we've got a lot of people arguing, well, they're more active by day, well, they're more active by night. How about Homo sapiens? When are we most active? Depends upon our job, depends upon our family, depends upon our environment. We live in the ice. We live in the tropics. We live along the river. We live in the desert. We live in the mountain. We live in the bottoms. I mean, it's and like I say, if they're governed by environmental law, we're getting more reports of youngsters. And one of the first things that Jeff Meldrum told Stan Courtney was, "Oh, by the way, it's extremely difficult to tell juvenile footprints from humans."
Yeah.
Good luck with that. And if you noticed most of Jeff's work, there were some reasonable sized footprints that he worked with. He didn't work with a lot of 7-inch, 9-inch, 12-inch prints. Most of them were much, much smaller or much, much, much larger because they're big footprints. But then you get into the mid-tarsal break and you get into the compliant gait of the pattern of the foot, trail, etc. But this is another reason why I'm doing the footprint work, because I believe we are dismissing a lot of prints which could be, not necessarily are, but could be theirs.
Yeah.
So and did you know that approximately 8%, or 1 out of every 13 people, at least according to one study in the Journal of Physical Anthropology, was that percentage of people have mid-tarsal breaks. So Homo sapiens have that.
Yep.
And my question is, what's the extreme individual variation of our footprint, which we can study because that's a known base, versus the unknown base of theirs? So I'm requesting people to send me pictures of suspect Sasquatch, known Sasquatch, if it's from a study and there's visuals, humans, and also black bear. And could we bring up that print that I sent you?
Um,
It should be in the
mm,
bottom. If you can't find it, that's okay. But I
I
think
don't
it's
remember you sending a print.
okay. If you look, it should be there in the bottom. I think I added it to our correspondence.
Well,
Yeah.
she looks for that. That's exactly kind of what we were talking about prior to you coming in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
I was just telling her I was just doing some reading up on foot morphology of Neanderthal
Yeah.
versus, and I got a paper here that says revisiting the metatarsal breaks.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and with the metatarsal break, and you're absolutely right. There's like 1 in 13 human that has that going on with that, and in this it says, oh my god, the calicoboid joint has been assumed to be the anatomical source of the motion. Recently, however, it has been suggested that the metatarsal break may occur at the cubonoid metatarsal joint rather than at the calicoboid joint.
Interesting.
There you go.
Yeah.
All our feet are different. Well, I think we've all seen certain people with incredible abilities to move their foot around in ways that we don't have an explanation for. And this might be part of that anatomical difference,
Right.
bending the foot, etc. Basically, I'll describe the photograph that I wanted to talk about.
I have it, but sorry,
recently, Priscilla Rosamond Davidson from her Sasquatch Museum made it available to me, and it looks like two things. One, it looks like a double bear print, but yet it looks like a Sasquatch print. And so what we're faced with it obviously has claws. And my question is, are they claws or are they elongated fingernail or toenails? What's the manicure session situation like for Sasquatches? Is it variable? Are there some that have maybe longer nails that could possibly? There we go. Now, if you look at that up at the top, I don't know that this is an obstructed big toe where the ridge fell down on it or not, because obviously bears do not have obstructed big toes. Most people look at this and tell me, hey, it's a double bear print. I've Sarah Brown told me her bear hunting friend is convinced that this is a double bear print. I've had most Sasquatchers tell me it's a double bear print. I've had other Sasquatchers tell me no, that's a Sasquatch print. And what's interesting to me is if you look down at where that second print should be, where is it? I don't see it personally. Right. I'm looking for a second imprint of a second impression, but I don't see it.
Right.
It measures out between 12 and 13 inches long. There have been numerous other descriptions about it. I'm going to try to check with Mr. Roseman. If he took the picture, he may have additional pictures that might show the gait, which would easily show us whether it's black bear or potentially a Sasquatch. I'm on the fence because I don't know. I was convinced it was Squatch at first, then I was convinced it was bear, and now I'm not sure. But it's interesting because it's almost a divided camp. So I just thought I'd show that up, and I think that's why it's important to study some of these prints, because some of them have us on the fence, and we emotionally jump in and decide, yeah, it's got to be that. But I'd like to take in the whole picture.
Yeah. I have a double bear print right in my garage right now.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, tell me, Ray, what do you think? What is it? Is it a double bear print?
Well, I'm not seeing where. So where's the location? Are we talking black bear? 13
Oregon.
inches. Then we're talking Oregon. Then we're probably talking about a black bear then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking, and it looks. I can see that it had water in it at one time.
Yep.
Yep. So it tells me may have been taken after a heavy rain. And if that were the case, I can see where the cement, or not the cement, but the substrate right there is cracking right under the forepaw versus the hind paw. I also can see where there was pressure on the hind paw because of the way the substrate is cracked as well.
Okay.
So I mean, for that, I would have to go, and just by the pointiness of the padding, because it does look like there's two different disturbances there. You know,
I see that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's interesting, but it's still pretty smooth, especially if you don't look at it with a critical eye.
Right.
And, but yeah, that's those. But these are some of the details that make it really interesting. You know.
Yeah.
You know,
And we obviously have to know location and when and how far from a road and all those things too. But because Sasquatch are so mobile and bear are so mobile, they can literally be crossing roads, and that's certainly not something that is a limiting factor.
Well, and then also with this picture, we got that dry spot that's right in between the forepaw and the back paw, which would indicate that there was no pressure right there. Mm-hmm. Whereas if it were for, like, say, apparently a left paw print, if there was pressure going right along the mid side of that would have been pushed down as well, which would tell me there's probably two different disturbances taking place there, which is probably be a good indication for bear.
That's great, because you're the first one to point that out. And I'm appreciative, because I'm trying to listen to all sides, because it's so easy to get into a confirmation bias, and I don't want to do that. I want every aspect on the table to look at, you know.
And I'm also looking at the 1, 2, 3, the fourth and the fifth digit there, right? You can see kind of right at the end, there's a hole. Right, a good example is right there at the fourth digit, right before the pinky toe. There's a hole, which could be the possible placement of a nail.
Sure. Yep.
But I would think that a black bear's nail would go out just a little bit more farther, honestly.
But you have to admit, it is an interesting print, is it not?
Yeah,
I agree. I'm kind of torn. It's hard. Honestly, it's hard for me to kind of tell which one it is. I mean, I'm pretty torn.
And that's where, you like to get, that's why it's so important for people to photograph gait pictures too, because usually we end up hollering human or Sasquatch. There's so many Squatch prints that do look human. And again, if that's the case, then they may be, at least in some cases, much closer related to us than many people would prefer not to admit. So that is extremely interesting.
Yeah. And, with the more common stuff, with the Patterson Gimlin, you can see they're definitely more rounded. And with the Grays Harbor, they're a little bit more elongated, but still,
Yep, individual variation, but yet with a big toe.
Yeah.
Unlike a bear. So, exactly. So Gwen, if you got another path for me to follow here to share with.
Well, I was just I think I was gonna shed a little bit of light on some of your photography work, because you really do some beautiful stuff here. And I'm just gonna drop us out of screen here. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And where did you take that at?
That was Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, but now I don't have to go so far because they just came in yesterday. And so I will be at the river all day tomorrow. I've got 2 meetings tomorrow, but 3 meetings tomorrow, I guess. But when I'm not at those meetings, I'm going to try to get out in the morning and try to get back there afterwards and try to catch the sunset with them. And there's some large numbers.
Yeah. You do some amazing photography.
I couldn't find a snowy owl until December 2012. We found this one, and it was my photo partner Al Sheldon and I, and we found this guy, and we just nailed him. I took 1,000 pictures of this guy.
It's
Then we
beautiful.
stopped at a little bar in Stoddard, Wisconsin, and along the river. And then we turned around and came back, and he moved to a different location. So I took another 1,000 shots of him. And I haven't taken only maybe 40 snowy owl pictures since.
I
But
mean, it's
go ahead.
gorgeous. It's beautiful. And on the other side here, you got this one.
Yeah, barred owl. There.
This guy is amazing. Which these guys are a lot bigger than I expected them to be.
They
until
are.
I saw one fly over me in person.
Oh, they really are, but not as big as the tigress, the great horned female. She's huge, and she will eat them.
Wow.
Which amazes me because I need to do some more research because I want to know what defenses barred owls utilize to minimize great horned owl predation. Because we got a lot of barred owls.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of great horns too.
Right.
But both species eat everything. And great horns will, of course, eat skunks. So they're not going to run out of anything to eat. Unfortunately, house cats too.
Oh, yeah. That's sad. And then you got this guy. He's so cute. It's
kind of funny because I had a date in Iowa. And on that night, I was packing and getting ready. And the gal wanted me to bring some reptiles and amphibians for the other campers. And so I was loading up with that. And I happened to notice there was a rabbit in the yard. And this cottontail was just chawing away. And I started snapping. And then all of a sudden, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm out of SD card.
Oh, no.
And just as I was down to the very last snap, this guy clipped the dandelion and I nailed the shot. I had a tripod and my 300 millimeter lens, and it came out. Well, that's publishable. It hasn't gone public yet, but
it's beautiful. Oh, I'm sorry to bust the bubble then.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. I haven't. Now with all the photographers and all the mirror cameras, and I've still got big lenses. I've got a 400, a 300, and 120.
Yeah.
I used to do weddings for a while, and I was a model photographer in Mankato for a couple of years. So I got my people photography in. Now it's just a matter of I'd like to get my hindquarters back out there and get more wildlife stuff.
Wow, that'd be amazing. I mean, your pictures are beautiful. So, can people hire you to do photography?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Where can they get a hold of you at for that?
Just get a hold of me. Well, I've got Dan Nedrelo Photography on Facebook. And if you Google me, my catch numbers should come up. So Google is kind of like my website. And you're going to get bombarded with reptile presentations and wildlife photography and Sasquatch stuff. And then if you just get a hold of me at Dana Nedrelo, which is probably what most people would do, or Dan A. Nedrelo, either one. If you just go Nedrelo Dan in front, whether I've got an A on the end of it or not, just nail me, let me know. I will give you the best rates you'll get because I'm in between jobs right now, and I'm really in need of making people happy with photography.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, reach out to Dan because, I mean, his work is beautiful, as you can see. Now, about a lot of your Bigfoot work, I mean, where can people reach out to you for that? Same place?
Same place.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect. I'm kind of a catch-all. So and if you want to talk dragonflies, I've probably got 50 species of dragonflies photographed.
Oh, so cool.
I do everything. If it sucks air, I need a picture. And usually a lot of them.
That is awesome.
So I'm after everything.
Dan, I mean, you've been a pleasure to have on this evening. And I mean, you have quite the background, quite the resume, and you are just a veritable person for information. So I appreciate your time and coming on here. And it's no wonder you're on so many podcasts. I mean, you have a lot of stuff that you've done. So I think that's admirable.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
thank
great
you.
job on that.
I'm just a curious guy. And I've probably been in, I think I've spoken at 10 different conferences so far. A couple times with the BFRO has asked me to Charlie down in Kentucky and
Nice.
A couple people for Ohio. I've done Tennessee, done Wisconsin. I'll be doing the Missouri conference this year, and then we'll be doing some camping and stuff. And so I'll be working with people there. I'm teaching a casting course with Barnaby Jones Caps in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin on May 9, if anybody's interested. And actually, my next podcast is with him. And you're my third podcast this last 2 weeks. So it's
wow.
Pretty wild. Yeah.
Very busy guy. Very busy guy.
Yeah.
So do you post where you're going, what you're doing on your Facebook so people can come hang out?
I will. Yeah, I try to do that.
Okay.
Also, I've got numerous groups out there, including Art and Data, Sasquatch Witnesses, for people that need to talk or, share their experiences with people like Abe or myself or other people. And then, or you for that matter too, Gwen. And then I've got Wild Man Literature. That is available. That's got virtually all of our authors, all of our Sasquatch books. And then on top of that, I've got a project called the White Biped Project. And I'm trying to track white Sasquatch references across the country. And I will be putting more time on that. But some recent new public groups that I put together include wildlife vocalizations, so that we know more about sandhill cranes and barred owl,
Yes.
symphonies and all that good stuff. And then I've also, the last one I just created is carcass signatures, so we can compare bear kills with feline kills, bobcat and cougar, and we can compare with the canines, wolves, dogs, coyotes, coy dogs, hybrids, and the foxes, and then bear, and then any number of other things that come along, and try to illustrate what Sasquatches are said to do. Everything from decapitation to the twisting of the hind legs on white-tailed deer, or how they operate.
Wow.
One of my interests is how are they intermingling with wildlife, and why a few reports of them so close? When B. Mills had her experience, she noticed how close they were to deer, and the deer were indifferent. When my friend in Georgia called me one day when she wasn't mad about the eye shine or eye glow from the third squatch in the back looking through her bedroom window, she called me one evening and said, "Hey, I just had a weird experience. I'm with my friend, and we saw a white-tailed doe walk out into the road, followed by a fawn, followed by a giant thing on all fours with a lot of hair. It turned its head away from the vehicle. We couldn't see its face. It was on all fours, and it was huge. It was like a bear, but it wasn't a bear. And as it crossed right behind the fawn, behind it, there was a little monkey thing with no tail bopping around up and down the road following the big one. What did we see?" And my philosophy was Mama Sasquatch with her pup, and she was right behind Mama Deer with her pup. If I was a little Sasquatch growing up bored, one of the first things I'm sure I would do is try to find a coyote pup and work with him and have fun with him. I've got a friend in Texas. One of her reports was, "I just about blasted this coyote that was heading for the chicken coop. All of a sudden, she got a monotone whistle that went," I can't do it right now, but just a loud blast, and this coyote stops. Head goes up in the air, turns around, trots immediately over to the whistler. And she'd seen the Sasquatches she'd had on her property. Okay, and I got that. That was a report from about 15 years ago. So I knew right away there was probably some manipulation. It's interesting how many Squatch vocals jive with coyote populations at night. So how they're operating might be variable like us. Some of us are dog lovers. Some of us are dog haters. Some of us actually have killed and eaten dog. And right on down the line. Is that applicable to them? I think probably so.
Wow.
Another good example. My buddy Ricky Idlet, the Mississippi Queen engineer. One of his buddies called him one day in total disbelief, and he said, "You'll never believe this." What? This is Kentucky. The guy was out hunting, probably mushrooms, and it was uh, I forget the time. The timing was the time when there were fawns. So it probably wasn't as early as mushrooms. I don't know what he was doing. He was scouting, just having a good time. He hits a ravine. He drops down this ravine. There are fawns all over. It's like a nursing ground for white-tailed deer fawns.
Wow.
No does in the area. And he's down there and he's looking at all these fawns in total disbelief. And he gets a vocalization. He gets rocks thrown at him. He gets some roars. He's out of there.
Wow.
Are they herding deer in certain situations like the way our Finlanders would deal with caribou?
Dude, that'd be wild. Sorry.
Is that not interesting?
Very cool.
I got a beautiful report from a gal out in Colorado, and she said that one of her Native American friends was with a friend with binoculars, and they watched two big black men walking amongst a herd of elk, just all over. And the elk were like completely indifferent to them, and they were big.
Wow.
So that's interesting. I got a report locally of a woman who had a friend who looked out. This is in southwestern Wisconsin. Looked out and saw a Sasquatch among his cows, just walking. You know, we have a big argument about whether or not they're breeding horse manes. You know, and I don't think a lot of ungulates are going to be very afraid of a little toddler Sasquatch that plays with them over time. Well, over time, that little guy's going to get bigger. And so I'm wondering how many of these youngster juveniles that are approaching adult size, wasn't too many years ago, they were playing with those captive animals. And now the captive animals are like completely indifferent to them, like the guard dogs from Tennessee. You know, they got desensitized to them. Well, in this next case that I've got in mind, I got an infection from my burn a couple of years after 2018. It was about 2020. And so I'm in the emergency and I'm getting taken care of, and I'm septic, and I had a secondary infection with that. So it was serious. My legs were just awful. And I was starting to wonder, how is this going to work out? And it turned out my emergency nurse was a baby from an incredible international 1975 Cashton, Wisconsin report that was in John Green's Apes Among Us book. And I had been told that the father was still in the area, who I finally got to meet through her help and her brother's help. But during the time, she said, I can remember Dad freaking out because this thing was living in the barn. It was walking with the cattle, and there'd be saliva all over the cattle. The dog was getting sick. It would come to the window. Dads finally moved us out of that house, and we went to a completely different area. Is there still activity in that location? I'm told yes. So we got secondary reports to back that up. So it's just, you never know who you're going to meet. But the idea that she was my emergency nurse and she was a little baby during the time that her family went through that ordeal. And of course, all the locals laughed at them and made fools of them. So.
Wow.
I mean, that's that's really cool. How often does that happen? You know,
exactly.
Out of everybody, all the stars and the planets have to be aligned for something like that.
Exactly. Then I don't know what you think of the mental telepathy thing. It's never happened to me. I've had good friends, well respected, who never would tell anybody, who've come up and said, "Yeah, it happened to me." I had one buddy who was working with 3 clans, and he said, I had a loud radio going on, and the voice in my head was, "Shut that off."
Wow.
Shut that off. And he felt like he knew the big male that was telling him that.
Wow.
My friends from Idaho, I had a very strange, very strange experience out there that I prefer not to say over the air, but I will just say this. There is an entity out there, a female Sasquatch, that has been seen repeatedly. And apparently there's been some mental telepathy. If, you know, some are good with that. some aren't at all. I'm curious about what to me, that's a little bit parallel like hypnotism. And back in my day in the 70s, when we were growing up in high school, there are a lot of people that didn't believe in hypnotism. I think it's far more well received now. Well, with the mental telepathy, maybe that'll be the case in the future. In this case, one of the interesting statements that was told to a good friend of mine was, "Your kind talks too much." I just found that wonderful. So true.
Oh, this came from a woman Sasquatch?
It was a woman Sasquatch.
Hey.
Okay. I've got some experiences I'll share with you privately. I'm not going to do it over the line because my credibility is already shot, I'm sure. So, but I'm trying to baseline science here and make wise decisions and help people along the way as much as I can, whether it's photography, whether it's what little I know of Sasquatch natural history, repeated report situations that back up theories and ideas. And, I've worked with a lot of people, activity on their private property, and it keeps coming up. If we are respectful, that probably will show in the way we carry ourselves, and I think that can be read. And that might just change some of the interaction possibilities, plus the fact people have told me they're suspecting that some of the behavior systems that we get are parallel to ours. So if we're all nervous and bent out of shape and got weapons and shining lights all over and just really on edge, well, that was one of the first things that Shane told me. He said, I studied you for 3 years before I brought you in here. You seem to be the type of person I'm looking for. Fortunately, it's worked out for me. And I got my sightings, and I had rocks thrown at me, but never hit. And we had various vocalizations. We had Scott Nelson working with us. Really enjoyed the interaction you guys had last week. And, there's so much ahead of us. So I just hope I'm around to see it. So as we learn more. But I just want to get my ass out in the woods and hang,
Yeah. And I say be true to you. And I mean, how many people, how many scientists and how many inventors were looked at like they were absolutely bonkers until, it was right. You know what I mean? So, I mean, a lot of your theories and ideas and the stories you're being told might be ahead of their time, but eventually, we have a little more truth.
Yeah.
It'll make sense.
Well, it's fun when it works for you. Because when I got that vocalization back, I was shocked. I mean, and I'm very lucky because I have members of my family that have visuals. So I'm lucky that way. So I'm not the only crazy one. And speaking of my visual, I had just spoken in Alabama on the 6th of June, and I made my way up to Tennessee to see somebody that Rick Rellis had set me up with, who was interacting with them. And that was wonderful. And the next day I was going to see another friend in Ohio, but it was late notice, and called another good friend, a mother-daughter team in Indiana, and said, "Hey, mind if I come through?" And they're like, "Yeah, come on, supper, get over here." So I drove up there and hung out and explained what happened in Alabama. And I made some more contacts. I've got a lot of invites and a lot of specific locations with people with repeat visuals. So that's just wonderful. And then, as usual, fantastic supper. I'm tired, having driven from Alabama and coming all the way up up to Indiana there. And I'm not that far from the Michigan border. It's a river system, northeastern Indiana. Relax, have supper, go in the living room, sit down, talking with the investigator and checking in with her family. We're going to go out that night with audio and hang out by some ravines where they get vocals and they get baby tracks in their garden. And this has been long term, so we know the area. And I'd had experiences there 2 years before. And I'm looking through the window, which has got blinds over across the window. And so they're like integuments of maybe there's 10, you know. So it's like sections across the window, which by the way is 3 by 4 feet. And I'm sitting in the chair looking, and all of a sudden I see the husband walk by. But it's so weird because he's so smooth. And I'm watching, and it's a 3 to 4 second walk by. He's going from right to left. And so I'm like, oh, he's heading for the door. He's going to come in. But I'm like, this isn't right. And so if you had a cartoon of a dude looking out the window with that little cloud over their head where you have what they're thinking or saying, it would be filled with question marks and exclamation marks. I'm silent now. I look at her and say, I'm seeing something. And she goes, yeah, I just caught the tail end of it. And I'm like, okay, it's got to be the husband. He's coming in the house. So he does. About a minute 38 later, and I timed this. I had my sighting at 7:37 p.m. He comes walking in the door wearing a green shirt. And I forgot how small he was. He's like 5'11". And I'm looking at him and I'm going, wait a minute. I said, is there anybody else out here? No, there isn't anybody on the property. Everybody's working or gone. Okay. And I asked her, she's 5'1". Would you go out and walk that trail by the trees? Sure. So she goes out and I'm looking out the window. I can't see her. So she comes back in and I said, could you sit where I'm sitting and look out and then I'm going to go? Because I had something to mark this off with. There was a flowering dogwood to the left. There were white flowers in the flowering dogwood. They were in the second integument, or not integument, but series of the blinds. Okay. So they were like at level 2. This individual was a head taller and at level 4 and walked across.
Wow.
Okay. He didn't have a round head and he was reddish brown uniform, lanky basketball player build. And like I said, 3-4 seconds. I went out there and I found the flowers and they were 7 feet off the ground or more because I put my arm up. I couldn't reach him. And so he was like a head taller than that. So he had to be 8 feet, not necessarily standing straight up. And we didn't get tracks, but they got vocalizations later. And then they found some I'll just say designs or glyphs, and I don't know how long it took you, Abe, to associate structures with them, but I was probably one of the last guys to think about it. But Shane Carpenter helped me with it because our property owner over there, he cut some trees down and got a reaction. He got adults that came in and started looking in his windows and built structures on the property, and he saw them. So that was back about 2019. I was starting to take it serious. And so they've got the structures around the Indiana area. I saw a rock stack, and there's been vocalizations there. I saw a footprint there several years before. And so that was my first daytime visual. Only took me 58 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I wanted it so bad when I was 10. And I did have an experience when I was 14 at a church camp in the northern pine woods of Wisconsin. But that was, it was like a loud hiss from a bull snake. And Pituophis melanoleucus I do know my Latin. And they, it was so loud, didn't make you vibrate like some of the other people have experienced, but it was so loud, you couldn't believe it. So I'm shocked thinking, what mammal is doing this? Because it's skirting the edge of the lake, it's staying behind the vegetation, and it's splashing, and there's a dozen kids we're in 7th grade. There's a dozen kids with flashlights on it, and it's not coming out. And so I finally, in my 40s, got to hear recordings from the Michigan Recording Project, former BFRO people who had recordings like that and also had visuals of 2 of them, I believe, shaking a raccoon out of a tree. So, yeah.
Wow,
So
it's wild how the puzzle pieces come together with time.
Yeah, that kind of put an exclamation mark on that one.
Yeah.
You know, and part of the reason what it did was it drove me to college to study everything because I wanted to know what in the flying H is making that sound.
That's so cool.
You know,
Just such a small catalyst.
I've got to know. And so I'm still studying vocal sounds.
Yeah,
which is hilarious because I still can't tell some of the bobcat calls from mountain lion. So,
yeah,
and some of the bear calls sound like birds, and some of the, there's other animals that sound like bear, and it's just hilarious. So, I mean, it's so easy to mix some of that stuff up without the printouts that they're doing now with a lot of the vocals that they're studying with Squatch and whatever species nailed the call. So.
Wow, that's amazing. So that's really cool that you were able to place what you were seeing where to be able to tell the height of your original sighting. I think that was genius. Being able
that was critically important. I told Tom. It's funny because I told Tom Steenberg about it and said I'll send you the details. And then luckily he turned up in the last podcast with Gary Kendricks with Sasquatch Watch with Bill, formerly with Billy Willard, and so that was nice. So then I detailed that all out for him on that podcast, so that was good. So that saved me a note.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Say, Dan, we are probably just at about the end of the show, ain't we, Gwen?
Yeah. We're 2 hours. I think this is probably one of our longest shows. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
it was really good, though.
I did pick up that print, so you can kind of see. This is that double step. I was telling you about.
Good job, Abe.
But you can see the very similarities with that picture that you sent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's of the black bear or Americana ursulus. See, I know my Latin too.
Hey, Abe, I got a request. Could I bug you to send me a photograph of that?
I was already going to offer that.
That would be great.
Yep. Nice. I was already going to offer it.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yep. All right, I got you there, buddy.
Okay.
Dan, you are wonderful, and I would love to have you on again.
Wow. Sure.
You have amazing research that you've done. You've done a lot of work in just in wildlife, which is super helpful in the Bigfoot world. So thank you so much for coming on, and everybody can find you and get a hold of you on your Facebook page, Dan Nedrelo.
Yep. And, or Dana.
Dana, yeah. Dana.
I'm a male, by the way. Yeah.
Dana. I didn't think that needed much clarifying, but
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on. And
Absolutely.
Thank you everyone for joining us, watching and joining in on the chat. So we'll see everybody next week.
Oh, thank you. Squatch on.
Bye.
Honored and thank you. It's fantastic. Great to see you, Abe.
You too, buddy.